One of the comments I get whenever I make a video about politics or race or something is that people complain that, you know, it's a booktube channel, I should just be about books. Well, this would be a video for them because this video is books, books, books. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of all things reading, books, booktube, anything else I want to talk about. And today, as I indicated, it's mostly going to be about books. I want to start off by wrapping up my January and going through the books I read in January. Now, I got off to a really slow start in January, but somewhere along the line, I picked up a lot of speed. I ended up reading quite a few books, more books than I normally read in a month. So I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe it's because I read more books through the Libby app on my Kindle, and therefore got them as, ebooks, which for whatever reason I have a tendency to read faster than a traditional print book. I did listen to 3 audiobooks, which obviously you can do more often, and oftentimes do when I drive or when I go for a walk. But I still ended up reading a lot of books, and I was noticing that some of my books seemed like books that were really big deal on BookTube just a few years ago. So starting off with that, I did read Perelin by Suzzana Clarke, and I really liked it. As I said in my initial video, I think I talked about it last week, I didn't love it, but I really, really liked it. I found it to be really engrossing. I almost approached it like a fantasy mystery, a psychological mystery, perhaps, and by approaching it that way, it really kept me reading. I thought the pacing was just right. I know not everybody enjoyed it as much as I did, but I really liked it and would definitely recommend it. I did a buddy read of The Age of Iron by J.M. Coetzee. I did a buddy read with Allie from Fox Folios. Great buddy read. Great to be able to read something alongside Allie, who's just really brilliant. And she's read a lot more of Coetzee's work than I have. I liked Age of Iron, but it wouldn't be, my top read by J.M. Coetzee. My understanding is the book was written right kind of the time when South Africa was transitioning away from apartheid, or beginning that transition away from apartheid. And there's a lot of violence and unrest, a lot of uncertainty about what was going to happen in South Africa. And the book really reflects it. My favorite thing about Coetzee is that he just dumps you in the middle of it. And he gives you a character to follow. In my experience of reading, I think this is 4th of his novels I've read. He gives you a character to follow, but you are never really fully comfortable with that character. Is this character doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Is this character someone who we should admire, someone who we should, be rooting for? In this case, the character of Elizabeth, I believe was her name, is kind of a mess. And she changes and she evolves, and you think, okay, well, this position I think is one that she's taken, I agree with, and then she does something else, you're like, well, I'm not so sure about that. But essentially, the book follows her story. She's dying of cancer, and as her health declines, she becomes more and more aware and open to the things that are going on around her and the injustice of apartheid. But it doesn't mean she always reacts in a way which, today I think we would. And I really think part of Coetzee's greatness is his ability to put us in that situation, to make us think through things the way the character would, and then reflect on those things the way we would. And this is a novel that's really tied to a specific time period, and so I have a feeling it would have read differently if I'd read it back closer when it was originally published. But it still held a lot of those kind of questions for me about what is the proper response, and what should people of all races and ethnicities be doing to overcome injustice, those kind of things. Or should we not be doing anything, or can we? Anyway, lots of great questions, and I really enjoyed the read and the buddy read. Right here at the end of the month, I finished The Idiot by Elif Batuman, which I liked. I'll tell you that this book, which follows a character, what's her name? Celine? Yeah. Which follows a character named Celine, a young woman who is an American but who is of Turkish descent, whose parents were Turkish immigrants. It follows Celine around in her kind of freshman year of college. Now, automatically looking at me, you should think, wow, did you enjoy a book following kind of the adventures, misadventures of a young woman of Turkish descent in her first year at Harvard? And I have to be honest with you, my first reaction was, I don't think this book is for me. There's a lot of amusing kind of stuff related to her college experience, kind of the experience of making friends and how random life seems to be, and people come and go. in and out of your life. I remember that from college, but that's certainly not been my life lately. And, you know, I worried that the author was going to be investing those things with far too much significance. Sometimes I thought it came close to doing that. And being an older person, I thought, well, that you know, obviously this is just something that a young person would think. And I really felt like the entire novel walked a really fine line, as though the novel itself were this kind of really fragile structure, this really fragile idea that the author had created. And it would have been so easy for the author to take a misstep and to, I think, ruin it. But the author didn't. Batuman manages to walk that line and create this kind of fragile, sort of really great reading experience in which we see, you know, the character isn't just questioning things, you know, about, you know, what do I do, who should I be in love with, what are my friends like, what's the meaning of life. Those things are there, but the author is also exploring the limits of language to help us understand one another. The limits of being able to understand any other person, the habit I think we all have of seeing ourselves as kind of the main character in our own story, in our own movie, in our own play, and all the other people around us have a tendency to be playing these kind of supporting roles, but then to realize, you know, that those people see us in the same way, and how we never really have that direct connection, or if we do, it's really, really rare. And I thought really the way the book explored language, the young woman speaks Turkish, she's taking Russian, she goes to Hungary and she learns to speak Hungarian, she speaks or at least can read in French. There's a lot about language here, and I thought in the end it was really well done. And on top of that, it's funny. There are good, funny bits, and Batuman's sense of humor is very wry. So I really liked it. That's what I would say. Oh, also, really early in the month, I read kind of the thrillerish novel Polar Vortex by Matthew Mather, I believe is his name. I read that book, and it was a gift from my daughter, and I had fun reading it. You know, there's a plane crash, there are mysterious people who survive, they're in the Arctic Circle, there are polar bears, there are perhaps, you know, evil Russians, there's a lack of food, it's cold, there's, you know, just the right amount of violence, I thought, that kind of makes the thriller work, and there's an outcome which is a happy ending, but not like completely, you know, unicorns and rainbows. So I enjoyed that. I also read Hamnet this month. Finally got around to reading Hamnet, and I liked it. As far as historical fiction goes, I thought it was good. It was beautiful. It was moving. I did at times feel like I was being a little bit manipulated, but as many people pointed out in my comment section the first time that I talked about this, you know, most books manipulate us in one way or another, and maybe it's just that I don't like being manipulated into feeling sad. Maybe that's the kind of manipulation I don't like, but still, I thought it was great. I thought O'Farrell's writing was just absolutely beautiful. Again, really early in the month, I read The Translator by Lelia Aboulela, there we go, who is a Sudanese author who lives in Great Britain, and this was a story about a Sudanese widow who falls in love with someone she works with at a university, and the difficulty of kind of that cross-cultural experience and bridging the gap between the Sudanese Islamic world and essentially a, you know, secular atheist Scottish guy who's been married before, and, you know, all these kinds of things come together. And I thought it was really well done, a really interesting read. I guess it's kind of a love story, but to me it's more about overcoming or seeing past perhaps the cultural barriers that we put between one another. I also read The Perelin Decline by BookTube's own Pae Veo, which went right over my head, I think, for the most part. It is definitely a novel of ideas and philosophy and an exploration of those kind of things, in which a young woman has essentially insomnia. We don't even know exactly how that took place. She is essentially set free from the hospital, goes home to her apartment, finds that it's full of rocks of all different sizes and boulders, and rocks play a huge role in the novel. At one point she's pushing a boulder across town to get it closer to her apartment, and kind of trying to figure out who she is and what all this means. And, you know, it was a really enjoyable read. I'd be lying to you if I said I understood all of it, because I didn't. Oh, I also read Stella Maris, the second of Cormac McCarthy's two new novels, I guess is what I'd call them. And Greg over at Greg over at Another Bibliophile Reads rightly pointed out that Stella Maris really is a coda to The Passenger, and then as such you really can't read it on its own. So I would echo that. If you haven't read The Passenger, I think Stella Maris will mean nothing to you. I didn't particularly think it was great. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't particularly like either one of the two new Cormac McCarthy novels, and I have a whole review of it. If I remember, I'll put it on the end screen if you want to see that. I also listened to 3 audiobooks. I listened to Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton as an audiobook, and I liked it. Not as much as Sean the Book Maniac, but I definitely liked it. And I thought the writing was beautiful, the characters were beautiful, the setting was beautiful. I just felt there was kind of a fairly obvious plot hole there in the novel, which I won't go into. I'll let you read and decide if it's a plot hole or not, but I listened to that as an audiobook. I also listened to The Storyteller, Dave Grohl's kind of autobiography of his life as a musician, as a rock and roll musician, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I have to tell you that Dave Grohl does not tell stories in direct order. It's not necessarily chronological. It can be hard to follow where he is at different points in his career. There's a lot of name dropping about famous people he's performed with and famous other musicians who he's met and who he admires. But it was just to me really good fun, and I thought his honesty and his directness kind of overcame whatever other weaknesses there might be. I did listen to that as an audiobook as well. I feel like I'm leaving a book out. Let's see. And then, I just finished listening to Orinoco by the 17th century playwright novelist Aphra Behn. Aphra Behn is one of the first women in the English world to be able to support herself through her writing, and she wrote plays and she wrote novels, and this is a novel that she wrote partially based on her experience at one time of living in the English colony of Suriname and her experience with slavery. And we follow the story of this African prince Orinoco, who is more or less kidnapped and enslaved, and follows the footsteps of the young woman he was in love with, who was sold into slavery by his father. Their experience together, their struggles together on a plantation and a slave economy in Suriname, and the tragic end of that. And I really thought it was really effective. And one of the things I thought about this, and this is, sorry, this is me talking about politics again, but one of the things I thought about this is that this play proves that as far back as the mid-1600s, people in England knew that slavery was wrong. They knew that it was an evil institution. They spoke out about it. They spoke out about how it was out of step with Christianity and their professed Christianity, and that's highlighted here. That they clearly recognized that people from Africa were in fact human, capable of all the human emotions of every other group of human beings, and yet they still continued to practice slavery in the English colonies well into the 19th century, proving that that the economics of slavery overcame any kind of, moral qualms they might have had about it. And I thought it was pretty good. I think once I've told you that, it may seem like I gave spoilers, let me say that, but I think you kind of know where that's headed if you know anything about slavery in the Americas during the time. So that is what I read. Now, I also wanted to talk about my Black History Month TBR, because I've set up a fairly challenging reading month for myself. And so let me go through the titles that I know I'm going to read. I'm going to read The Color Purple. I've already started that. That's one classic of African American literature that I've never read. I'm about, 3/5 of the way through. Should finish that up today. That's by Alice Walker, and I'm really liking it at this point. I also started reading, Never Caught, kind of the story of Ona Judge, who was a slave who ran away from Washington, George Washington, while Washington was living in Philadelphia as President of the United States. And the author of that book is Erica Alexander Dunbar, I believe, is the author of that book. I read one chapter of that, and I really liked it, and I'm kind of going to not pick it up again until I can devote more of my attention to it. I'm going to read Telephone by Percival Everett. That would be my second Percival Everett novel. I have no idea what it's about, even though I've heard people tell me that there are different endings. I also have on my schedule to read How the Word is Passed America's Reckoning with Slavery and Its Legacy and Its Past by Clint Smith, which was a really important book published last year. I'm gonna try to get to that. I'm reading, let's see, I'm listening to an audiobook, 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northrup. I'm about halfway through that because I drove home from my mom's yesterday. I'm also participating in Margaret Penard's kind of organized effort to support, have a readathon for Black AuthorTube authors. And so I've signed up to read Whose Fault? Kismet or Impediments by Peter Okonkwo, a writer that I think I've seen interact with Margaret on her channel, but I've never read anything by, and so I picked a copy of that book up on my Kindle, and I'm going to read that this month as well. I feel like I'm losing. Oh yeah, there's also then this little matter of the BookTube Prize. I'm judging nonfiction, and so I'll be choosing 3 nonfiction titles from the BookTube Prize group I was assigned to read this month, and I'll read 3 next month. Just looking at the length of the books that are in my group, you know, nonfiction works this way. I have a feeling I'm not going to be doing March of the Mammoths in March because I don't think there'll be time for me to read those books and The Count of Monte Cristo, which is the mammoth I want to read, and so I'll have to put that off until a later date. So there you go. There's my wrap-up of January, my plans for reading in February. Anyway, there you go. There is my Saturday Hodgepodge for today. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.